Hello everyone. I decided to do, I guess this is video number 4 in my Roll20 series, where I discuss kind of setting up games in Roll20 and different useful things you can use in Roll20. So I really went over a lot of the basics last time. This time I'm going to go over dynamic lighting. It's one of those things that I wasn't very familiar with, but I've actually been playing around with a lot, and I'm starting to like it more. It'll definitely be implemented in my games soon enough. So I was going to give an example of how I set up a dynamic lighting situation in my Barrowmaze campaign that I'm kind of doing right now. My B team group that are going through it. So the first things first is you do need to get your map. Now, in my previous videos, I covered how I do my maps and how I edit them in the GIMP program and put them basically into and line them up in Roll20. So if you're not familiar with that process, go back to video 3 because that'll show you how to do that. And then this video, we're just going to do dynamic lighting. So let me get to my page bar here. And we'll scroll down. I already opened up a blank box. So the first thing you want to do is hit the settings, because you need to set the page up for dynamic lighting. So click on it, and you can do whatever you generally like. I personally like having a gray background. I'm using 5-foot cells. I like it to be black, like the lines, the grid lines. I like them to be black. And then I like, this is basically stating like if you're using dynamic lighting, where there's a barrier for lighting, your players can't move through it, which I like. So I always turn that on. Leave the fog of war off. If you turn the fog of war on, it just shuts off all of dynamic lighting. And then if you want to put some audio in there, scroll back up to the top, and then there's dynamic lighting, and you can turn it on. So the first one. And then depending on what kind of mode you want. So standard dynamic lighting, it'll show, the players, and as they move, you can put it on explore mode, which as they go, it's the areas that they have lit up will stay lit up. I don't like that per se, so I don't use it. And then daylight mode is, say they, come to an area that has a bunch of light, you can turn the daylight mode on so that they can see. But I do turn on update when token drop. Unless you've played with dynamic lighting, it's kind of weird to understand what this is. But if you don't have this turned on, when your player moves their token around, the light kind of shines everywhere that it is, all around. And they can kind of just like move their token around and check areas out without you as the DM being able to kind of see that they're moving their token about and they're looking at stuff. Whereas this, when they move the token, until they click to like drop the token into its spot, the light doesn't change. So I like that a lot. You can change the opacity of the darkness, and you'll see that when we kind of get into it. And then there's the advanced and legacy settings. I don't play with those. So I'll save it here. And then, you can, name whatever you want or do whatever you want with this page, and, put whatever maps and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this map, which I've already done previously. So I haven't added the dynamic lighting to it, but I stretched it out, got it to where I wanted it in the grids and everything like that. All the stuff that I went over in the previous video, I've done to this. So this is coming in kind of with a map. So it's not a very difficult process. Right now I'm on the object layer. You need to switch to dynamic lighting layer. So click over to that. And then I use polygon for the most part because my, it's pretty gridded. So I use the polygon. and then it'll have up here the color that you want it to be. One of my buddies told me about this, and I think it's a really good thing. I put it like kind of this neon green, but any color that stands out, because that way you can really see it. Your players aren't going to see it, but you can kind of tell where it's at. So this is the little dungeon. It's Mound 54 for Barrowmaze. So I hold down the shift button because I'm using the polygons, and then I just start making the lines. And you're defining basically where walls are, is really what you're doing when you're doing the dynamic lighting. So I'm going to go around the whole thing. So it just takes a couple clicks. Now there's a secret passage here. I haven't labeled it yet, and I will. But I'm going to go ahead, and that's the first thing. Now I hit escape, and it's set. So I need to go back and add some other barriers. There are 2 doors here, and then there's a secret passage. So I just create a door. Oop, hold on. Control Z. And then hit escape. Hit escape. Hit escape. So there, that's pretty much all that it takes to set it up. But, you know, how do you know that you got it right? So that's a big thing. So first things first, I'm just going to quickly switch over to the GM layer, and I'm just going to add a text box, just because it bothers me a little. I usually go up to 75 as my font, and just put an S. Go back to select, there's the S, and then I just move it into position. And remember, your players won't be able to see that because it's on the GM layer. So now I know there's a secret passage there. So when we go back to the object layer, what you can do to test it is just pull in a character, or any token, really. So I got Rife on here. Pull Rife on in, and I'll move him. And so when you have a token that does light, you need to go in and edit the token. So just go over to dynamic lighting. So first things first, turn vision on. Otherwise, the character doesn't have, like, it's basically not interacting with dynamic lighting. If you want to give them night, if they have night vision, you can set it up here. But in my game, I do the old school stuff where night vision doesn't work if there's any source of light. So I'll turn that on if they're in complete darkness in the middle of the game. But generally, they have light on them. So then token emits. So what kind of light does the token emit? So it's emitting bright light. And let's pretend that he has a 30-foot kind of like a torch or lantern or a continual light spell, something like that. Enter, and he should have light. You can also add low light in here. So if you do one of those things where it sheds 30 feet of light and 10 feet of low light, or something like that, 15 feet of light and 10 feet of low light, you can set that here too, so it'll kind of like mask the distance. If you want to get really fancy, you can do things like a beacon lantern, where it only shines in one direction. So you can set up here like directional lighting, so the tokens only have light going one way. And you can change the color if you wanted to set up that. It's really good for setting up auras too. Like if you want to know, like, you know, this person's got a 30-foot aura, you can just actually turn on the light and change the color. Like change it to, you know, blue or pink or gold, and then it'll show where the aura is. So it's neat for doing that. So a couple different options. So now you just hit save settings, and as you can see, this area is darkened, and his light source you can see through here. So, and you can move him around, and the lighting changes. Move him into another room, and see the doorway blocks the light. Move him into here, the door blocks the light. And you can also bring in another person, like say I brought in Theodemar. So you can look through the character's point of view by hitting Control L. and that's what they can see. So, let me do it one more time. So that's what the character or the player would be seeing on their screen at the time. So as they move, things change, and they can't get through things. See how I'm pulling up, but they can't get through the doors. They can't get through because I turned on that setting that doesn't allow them to move past the dynamic lighting bars. So when you're doing this, I was dragging them through earlier. That was because I'm the DM and I have, like super user, in essence, ability. So if I go over here and we have Theodemar over here and I do Control L, he can't see anything because he doesn't have a light source. And Ryfon's in the other room and the door is blocking the light source. And you notice when I set up the dynamic lighting, and I'll go back to it, I put in just single bars here. I didn't do the whole thing. I put a single bar for the door. So if you're in the game and they open the door, you can just select it. You can either just move it, and all of a sudden, go back. Ryfon can go in, and now he can shine light into there. And if you look over at Theodemar, he still needs vision. Whoops, hold on. No matter what, the token needs to have vision turned on. They might not emit light, but they need vision. So note that. But you can kind of see, he can see what he can see. And then, if you go back to dynamic lighting, I can put the door back in. Sometimes it's hard to grab these things. Put the door right back where it was, and now it's not light in there anymore. So that's pretty much dynamic lighting. It's not too difficult. It can get a little intense depending upon, how much of it you do. And how big the dungeon is. Like, I wouldn't do this for... It would be very difficult for me to do this on the dungeon layout for, Stone Hell, like one of the full, quarter dungeons. They have 4 dungeons, glued together kind of to make a level. Like, even a quarter of one of those levels would be very difficult to do the whole thing. I'm talking not impossible. It's just, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze on it. But for these little dungeons, I think it's works really, really nice. Another thing is you can actually put objects in too. I'm trying to look for a specific... this one right here might be good. So if you look at my layer, dynamic lighting, I put in the columns because they block line of sight. And you can do this with anything that blocks line of sight. All I did for this was just went to the dynamic lighting, draw shape, clicked on that, still green, and then if you hold the Alt button, you can make circles. So I just put circles on top of where there would be columns. But if you go in, and let's pull Ryfon back in again, we're going to have to, every time you pull a character onto it, you've got to reset up their vision. But I do have a workaround for that. And notice how his character, like if I do that, the columns are basically blocking some of the light. So that's kind of neat. I'm going to play around with that. I don't know, as I said before, if the juice is worth the squeeze on it, because it does kind of look kind of weird. But, I'll try it for now, and we'll see how I like it. So, pulling it down. Now, the one way you can kind of get around the whole, resetting the token every time is I've created a token bank. I put it as my first page. And so I set up all of their visions and all of their, put them with vision, who has light, what light source, everything like that. And so every time I'm going to put them on a different map, just grab them, copy them, and then paste them onto the map. And these tokens that already have everything set up, they're good to go. So you can do that. I have a buddy who kind of instructed me on this. You can put templates in here if you use common templates, like, oh, they're shooting fireballs all the time, and the fireballs has X, radius. You just have an explosion template in here that you can just grab and copy. Anything that you're using pretty often, you can go in here and just kind of put it and have it as your token bank. Fire tokens, lightning tokens, darkness, anything like that. You can set up a little token bank here. So that's pretty much the basics of dynamic lighting. So I hope that was helpful, as are the other videos. In general, if you like the videos and you have any other questions, put them in the comments, and I'll see if I can answer any of them or add them to my list of video creations. So, all right, I hope everyone enjoyed it. All right, bye.